It began with a flicker. A faint, unusual signal bounced through the static of the Andromedan drift, a section of cold, dark space most advanced species never bothered to chart. It was weak, almost accidental, like a whisper slipping through the cracks of a collapsing door. But for the Aulethi, a race of archivists and galactic historians, there were no such things as accidents. Everything had a source. Everything had a reason. High Curator Jellerin stared at the monitor aboard the Auleth's voice, narrowing his pale, opalescent eyes. The frequency pattern wasn't natural. It carried structure, rhythm, a strange, chaotic kind of harmony. It almost sounded like screaming. They triangulated its origin to an unnamed blue planet on the edge of a yellow dwarf system in the Milky Spiral. It wasn't catalogued. No diplomatic presence. No trade routes, no known life. In fact, the system was flagged by the Khazari Empire centuries ago as unstable and not suitable for contact, which of course made it the perfect place for the Aulethi to investigate. By galactic standard, the Auleth's voice arrived quickly. The ship hovered just outside the thermosphere of the blue planet, cloaked in layers of interwoven light particles, undetectable to anything short of a god. From this distance, they scanned. And what they saw made Jellerin forget to breathe. It was a contradiction in every sense of the word. The planet's surface shimmered with water, vast, endless oceans swallowing most of its terrain, yet on the land, massive structures clawed at the sky in defiance of gravity. In some regions, they built cities that looked like stars fallen to Earth. In others, it looked like they'd never left the caves. Humans, billions of them, and not united. The Aulethi had seen war before. Civilizations clashed, borders expanded, ideologies spread. But Earth was madness sculpted into civilization. They weren't just at war, they were at all wars. Ideological, spiritual, racial, political, economic, even wars within themselves. Depression, addiction, poverty. Humans battled their own shadows daily. They didn't just conquer planets. They struggled to conquer their own homes. Jellerin watched in disbelief as one region burned from wildfire, while another built machines to explore neighboring planets. A city starved, while another hosted billion-dollar celebrations just miles away. They invented music that brought tears to the eyes, and bombs that erased generations. "We're too late," whispered one of the assistants, his translucent fingers trembling over the console. "They're dying." "No," Jellerin said. "They're fighting to live." He tapped into the planet's electromagnetic field and began siphoning data from their global communications. It was overwhelming. No unified voice, no common goal. Arguments layered over protests, layered over music, layered over screams, layered over hope. It was chaos. It was beautiful. One broadcast, labeled simply as news, showed a war in progress. Children caught in the middle, cities bombed to rubble, leaders giving speeches with polished smiles while their hands stayed hidden under the table. But moments later, another feed lit up with a video of strangers forming a human chain to save a drowning man during a flood. Another showed a scientist in a tiny lab announcing a breakthrough in cancer research. One clip featured a child, crying, hugging a rescue dog with its tail wagging so hard it knocked over a lamp. The Aulethi crew was silent, confused, shaken. They'd catalogued 1,000 worlds, perfect utopias where emotion was bred out, planets governed by logic, order, purpose, and yet none had produced what this little blue planet did in a single chaotic day. "You need to see this," another assistant called, voice tight. "We tapped into something called internet comment sections." Jellerin winced. "Are they part of the political council?" "No. They're just normal people, reacting to everything. Everyone has a voice. They read the comments, the hate, the love, the passion, the nonsense, the obsession with cats. The arguments about nothing, the defense of everything. There are no castes, no silencing, the assistant whispered. They shout into the void, knowing no one will hear, and still, they shout. Jellerin had to sit. He realized something then, something terrible and awe-inspiring. Humanity was not special because of its intelligence, nor its brutality, nor even its compassion. Humanity was terrifying because they refused to agree. They embraced conflict. They fed on difference. Where other species sought order, humans thrived in the unpredictable. The galaxy had no word for them, because no word could contain them. And for the first time in his long, measured life, Jellerin felt fear. Because the humans hadn't even left their planet properly yet. And already, they were more dangerous than any species that had mastered the stars. And he had no idea whether that was a gift or a warning. They had watched collapsing civilizations, entire empires erased from existence in a single generation due to greed, climate failure, or war. They had archived the noble rise and inevitable fall of hundreds of species, many more advanced than humans, many more civilized. But none had looked like this. None had felt like this. The Owleth's voice hung invisible in orbit, its cloaking shroud folding photons around the hull like liquid mirror. Below, the world spun, swimming in oceans and firelight, split by clouds, choked by smog in places and pristine in others. They had no words for the contradiction. Earth was not a planet. It was a paradox wrapped in defiance. Jellerin stood before the massive projection dome inside the ship's observatory chamber. The planet turned slowly across the glass, projected in such detail it looked like you could reach out and touch it. The data stream scrolled along the side. Carbon saturation, climate decay, radiation patches, extinction metrics. 11% of their known species will be extinct in less than 50 of their years, the environmental analyst stated. They're accelerating their own planetary collapse. And yet, another said, they're making plans to colonize other planets, while burning this one to death. Jellerin didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the rotation of a region the humans called Europe. In one feed, a political summit was unfolding. Dozens of leaders in sleek suits, shaking hands, smiling while satellites caught the spike in surveillance drones just outside the conference zone. Peace was performance. Security was for the rich. A few degrees around the curve, another feed lit up. A tent city of refugees, huddled beneath makeshift shelters, their skin blistered from cold, children coughing from untreated disease, and volunteers handing out what little they had. One woman gave up her own coat to wrap around a stranger's child. "Explain this species," Jellerin said quietly. "How can they ignore pain at this scale while showing compassion in the same breath?" "They operate on what they call emotion," answered Litrin, the cultural historian. "It's irrational, unstable, and yet it binds them. Does it unify them? No, it divides them even more." Silence filled the chamber. The humans had mapped their own bodies, sent robotic arms beyond their solar system, built machines that could predict storms, simulate universes, even communicate instantaneously across the globe. And still, they allowed poverty, disease, war. Every species the Owlethi had ever documented evolved into order, harmony, singular purpose. But humans evolved in conflict. It was like evolution had gone rogue on this planet. Litrin walked to the central console and displayed something new. This is what they call social media. It's a shared, uncontrolled psychic field. a hive of digital thought where every human can transmit their views to billions instantly. Unfiltered? Jaloran asked, his brow tightening. Completely. No authority governs what they say. Some of it is lies. Some is truth. They don't even agree on which is which. The screen filled with streams of text, videos, reactions. One post spoke about ending hunger. Another denied hunger existed. Another accused the first two of being tools for political groups. The same user then posted a video of a raccoon stealing food and called it the highlight of their day. Madness, genius, cruelty, humor, grief, all layered over each other like sediment. You must see this, Litrin continued, switching to another projection. It's called fiction. Fiction? Yes, deliberately false stories created for emotional stimulation. They consume it constantly. Some of it mimics reality so closely we can't tell if it's real. Other stories involve dragons, immortal gods, talking animals. It is integral to their development. Children are raised not just with facts, but with lies designed to teach them truths. Jaloran's lips thinned. They mold their young using contradiction. Exactly. Outside the chamber, the communications team was still sorting through intercepted transmissions. One technician shouted across the hallway, waving a data slab. "We've picked up a pattern," she called. Jaloran and Litrin followed her down into the lower tech bay, where a cluster of projection discs formed a lattice of human speech patterns across time. Music, she explained. They send messages encoded in rhythm, not for data, for emotional manipulation. Watch. The discs played snippets of music. One was violent, almost primal, its bass pounding like war drums. Another was so mournful the silence that followed felt like a funeral. And then there was joy, a soaring orchestral swell that lifted the heart despite the listener not understanding a word of it. "This is not communication," the technician whispered. "It's something deeper. They feel their messages as much as they speak them. They transmit pain." "Is this a warning signal?" Jaloran asked. "No, it's entertainment." Silence. The galaxy had no concept of a species that hurt itself for pleasure. They watched horror films, read tragedy, wrote poems about suicide, war, loneliness, then sang songs about hope, love, dreams. They turned their own suffering into art. This wasn't a civilization. This was a storm with a heartbeat, and the galaxy hadn't noticed it, not until now. As the ship's AI finished compiling its psychological profile on humanity, the results were displayed without ceremony. Unstable, unpredictable, indestructible. "Wait," Litrin said, pointing to the last word. "That can't be correct. They're destroying their world. Their bodies are fragile. Their society is splintered." The AI replied coldly. "Yet they survive. They adapt to every trauma. Unlike other species, they do not require global order to continue. In fact, disorder strengthens them." A stunned quiet fell over the room. "Are we saying," one analyst began, "that this species evolves by breaking itself?" Jaloran nodded slowly. "Yes, and that is what makes them dangerous." As if on cue, another broadcast lit up, a space launch, from a nation the humans referred to as private sector. A lone rocket painted with advertising roaring into the sky. Not military, not global, just some man who wanted to fly. He made it. The rocket touched the edge of space. The Olethi watched the broadcast as the crew celebrated in Houston. Strangers hugged, wept, laughed. He'd done nothing strategic. He hadn't saved anyone, hadn't discovered anything. He just proved it could be done. That a human, just one, could defy gravity. And the world cheered. Jaloran turned away from the screen and looked out at the blue marble in space. "They don't make sense," he whispered. "They don't need to," Litrin replied. That night, the Alethi Council convened aboard the ship. Debate raged in the chamber. Some wanted to initiate contact. Others demanded immediate withdrawal. The head of security warned that if this species discovered space travel at scale, they'd spread faster than disease. They are fractured now, he said. But that will not last. Eventually, one of them will bring the others under one banner. And when that happens, they will not come seeking peace. They will come hungry. For what? For everything. Jellerin stood at the center of the chamber, his voice quiet but firm. We've seen logic-based civilizations, empathic ones, even hive minds. They all eventually collapse under the weight of stagnation. But this... He gestured towards the planet on the display. This is a living paradox, a species that thrives not despite its pain, but because of it, a species that chooses to care even when it costs them everything, that laughs while bleeding, that dreams even as it dies. We do not understand them because they do not want to be understood. They are not looking for peace, they are looking for meaning. Another elder asked, "Then what should we do?" There was no easy answer. If they contacted the humans now, they risked accelerating them, feeding the fire. If they remained hidden, they left the galaxy unprepared for what was coming. Because it was coming. Not today, not tomorrow, but one day a rocket would launch from Earth that wouldn't stop. A human voice would be heard on a planet not their own. They would crawl from their cradle, bloodied and battered, and claim the stars, not with clean hands, but with fierce intent. Jellerin whispered, "Mark this system as forbidden." Shock rippled through the chamber. But, he raised his hand, not to protect us from them, but to protect them from us. If we interfere, we will break what makes them different, what makes them dangerous, what makes them... He hesitated. Magnificent. He turned his back to the council. Let them rise or fall on their own. The galaxy is not ready for them, but one day it will have no choice. Outside the ship, Earth spun beneath the stars, loud, broken, brilliant, waiting. Jellerin didn't sleep. Not because he didn't need to, his species required rest cycles like most sentient life, but because sleep would have meant peace. And there was no peace left in his mind since discovering Earth. The ship had moved to a higher orbit now, keeping itself out of accidental detection range. Though the humans lacked the technology to see cloaked vessels, their unpredictability made caution a necessity. If there was one universal truth about humans, it was this: they always did the impossible. But only after you bet they wouldn't. The Oleth's voice continued its silent vigil above the Earth, collecting everything. From whispers in private conversations to nuclear policies discussed behind closed doors. From viral dance videos that baffled the analysts to secret military tests that terrified them. Yet the closer they observed, the more elusive understanding became. Humanity wasn't a puzzle to be solved. It was a wildfire, always changing, always consuming, always spreading. In the lower research deck, Litrin stood with two other analysts staring at a particularly disturbing feed. This one wasn't from war zones or riots. It was far quieter, a laboratory. Inside, a human scientist with graying hair and a permanently furrowed brow adjusted the settings on a containment unit. Inside that unit was a pulsing object, a test reactor barely larger than a soccer ball. It glowed faint blue, leaking radiation in small, controlled bursts. "What is this?" Litrin asked. "Experimental energy source," replied the assistant. "They're calling it a microfusion cell." "Do they understand the risk?" The assistant looked grim. "Barely, but they keep pushing, testing." Their approach to safety is based on hindsight, trial and error, mostly error. Lytron clenched his fists. And still they advance? The assistant nodded. Faster than we expected. The footage continued. The test reactor began to pulse erratically. One of the scientists panicked and tried to shut it down. The alarm sounded. But then, the lead scientist stayed calm, adjusted a dial. The pulsing slowed. The reactor stabilized. Disaster was averted. The man laughed. The humans clapped and resumed their work. That was it. They danced on the edge of annihilation, and when they survived, they celebrated. Lytron turned away. This species is suicidal. No, said a quiet voice behind him. Jaloran had entered unnoticed. They are not suicidal. They are obsessed with surviving death. Lytron frowned. That's a contradiction. No, Jaloran replied. It's their nature. In the following days, the Alethi continued their deep surveillance. They studied more than politics and technology. They dove into the darker corners of humanity, the underground markets, the darknet forums, cartels, cults, fanatics, serial killers, and con artists. They found humans who poisoned their own people for profit, who trafficked others like livestock, who built lies so large they became reality. And yet, in that same world, often in the same cities, they found selflessness. A woman using her tiny income to feed abandoned children. A man risking his life to rescue animals from war zones. Teenagers organizing fundraisers for people they had never met. Strangers donating kidneys. Elderly veterans protecting protesters. People building shelters with their bare hands. Humanity was not divided into good and evil. It was both, in every individual. Every heart carried the capacity for cruelty and kindness. Every mind teetered between genius and madness. And the terrifying part? They chose, every day. One day the humans launched another rocket. This time it carried a probe, not military, not corporate, a collaboration of nations, students, and dreamers. The probe was named Dawn 9, and it carried a time capsule. The Alethi intercepted the full contents of the capsule before it even left the atmosphere. It contained a golden disc engraved with 116 images, photos of Earth, of humans smiling, working, falling in love, protesting, playing. It had recordings of greetings in 55 languages, snippets of music, art, mathematics, a child's laughter. A mother's heartbeat, a crying violin, a whisper, "We are here." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a plea. Please know us. Please remember us. Please understand we tried. Jaloran listened to it 3 times, standing motionless, each time the message sounding less like communication and more like a final letter from a dying civilization. And yet, the Earth was still thriving. Bleeding, yes, struggling, but alive. They weren't dying. They were preparing. "Sir," a tech called from the upper deck. "Something unusual." Jaloran floated up, following the voice. On the screen was a live satellite feed, a warship, loaded with nuclear missiles, turning toward a contested border. Tensions between 2 nations had reached a critical peak. The Alethi crew watched in real time as both nations deployed air squadrons. The humans on the ground prepared for the worst. Military channels were filled with coded language. Journalists speculated. Civilians panicked. And then, nothing. A single human voice, a negotiator, managed to delay the strike. Then another. Then public protests surged. Hackers took down military communication lines, flooding them with images of children. One soldier refused an order, his story going viral. The pressure diffused. For now. Jaloran stared at the screen long after it dimmed. "They came so close to extinction," Lytron said, barely above a whisper. Jaloran nodded. But they didn't choose it. They almost always do, though. Every generation stands on the edge. Yes, Jaloran said, but every generation fights. Days passed. More broadcasts came in. The Aleth's voice continued its silent orbit, watching, learning, and, though they wouldn't admit it, feeling. One day, a human child looked up at the night sky, pointed to the stars, and said to her mother, "Do you think someone's watching us?" The mother laughed. "Maybe," the child grinned. "I hope they know we're trying." That same night, the Alethi Council met once again. The data collected was now too vast to ignore, and the implications too dangerous. "We must decide," said the elder Meon. "Do we reveal ourselves to this species, or do we classify this planet as a level red threat?" Arguments broke out. They are primitive. They are unstable. They are beautiful. They are insane. They are just children. They are gods in the making. Jaloran waited until the shouting subsided. Then he stood and said, "They are us." Confused murmurs spread across the chamber. Not biologically. Not historically, but emotionally, spiritually, ideologically. They reflect what we once were, before we sterilized our worlds, before we removed pain, hunger, war, passion, chaos. We called it evolution, but perhaps it was surrender. Silence. I watched a man donate his heart, literally, so his wife could live. I watched a child teach a robot how to feel. I watched a nation mourn strangers halfway across the planet. They have not mastered peace, but they have mastered trying, and that is enough. Another elder said, "But they are dangerous." "Yes," Jaloran replied, "but so are stars, so are oceans, so is fire. Should we hide from them forever, or do what no other species dared? Which is, trust them." The chamber fell quiet. One by one, the elders gave their vote. In the end, the decision was made. No contact, no interference. No threat designation, but one note was added to the galactic records under Earth's entry. Species, human. Classification, unknown. Status, observed. Recommendation, watch, learn. And when they come to the stars, stand aside. Let them find their own way, for the galaxy has never seen their like before, and never will again. Back in the observatory, Jaloran stood alone. The blue planet spun below, wild and wounded. He pressed his palm to the glass and whispered in the ancient language of his people. "You're not ready, but you're coming anyway, and the stars will never be the same." Far below, a child scribbled a dream onto paper. A rocket, a planet, a single word in shaky handwriting. Hope. They didn't leave. Though the Alethi had made their decision, no contact, no interference, the Aleth's voice remained in Earth's orbit, cloaked and silent. Jaloran could have ordered a retreat. He didn't. No one questioned it. There was something about Earth that refused to let you turn away. Even now, weeks after first contact through observation, the crew found themselves restless. They'd watched entire planetary collapses without blinking. They'd documented a war that wiped out 5 billion lives on the Ellerin moons in a single afternoon. And they slept through the night. But this blue planet with its howling storms, weeping cities, dancing children, and schizophrenic morality, this chaotic sanctuary, was different. It haunted them. Litrin said it best. Earth is not a planet, it's a confession. One the galaxy was never supposed to hear. The ship's analysts, unable to resist, began archiving Earth's emotional language, not just what humans said, but how they said it. The voice cracks, the eye flickers, the way grief turned to rage, then back to love, and then to silence. Jaloran stood in the behavioral analysis bay, as a loop of video footage played on the wall. A wedding. 2 humans kissing, surrounded by cheering families. Cut. A funeral. The same couple, now one, broken, kneeling beside a casket. Cut. An explosion. A protest. A child screaming. Cut. A dance class in a slum. A boy spinning barefoot on concrete, smiling. "Why do they keep going?" a technician whispered. "After all of it, why do they still try?" "Because," Jilorin said softly, "they haven't figured out how to stop." The AI's simulations became more complicated. It began projecting potential futures based on Earth's current trajectory. Some simulations ended in nuclear fire, others in ecological collapse. Some with AI enslaving their creators, or plagues wiping out 95% of the species. There were thousands of endings, and most were horrific. But in every cluster of futures, a few stood out. Flickers of improbable, miraculous survival, a united Earth, a post-scarcity economy, humanity among the stars, not as conquerors, but as something far stranger, as teachers. In those simulations, it wasn't their technology that elevated them. It was their story. Other species, rigid and orderly, began to change after meeting humans. They learned to sing, to dance, to question, to hurt and grow. The galaxy didn't fear them because they were destructive. The galaxy feared them because they were infectious. In the observation chamber, Litrin approached Jilorin with new data. "They've launched a telescope," he said. "Not their most powerful, but it's aimed at the Andromedan drift. If they find the right lens frequency, they might catch our reflection." "Then we move?" Jilorin asked. Litrin hesitated. "No. I want them to see us." Jilorin looked up. Litrin's voice was lower now, almost ashamed. "I want to know what they'll do, when they realize they're not alone." "You already know what they'll do," Jilorin said. "They'll build something to reach us." Meanwhile, down on Earth, humanity continued its complicated dance. A new political crisis erupted over resource distribution. One nation hoarded water during a global drought. Another blocked medical shipments over disputed territory. The rich promised change. The poor promised rebellion. Somewhere, in a desert city, a man set himself on fire in protest. A week later, 4 million people marched for justice. In the same span of days, a teenage girl built a working model of a hydroelectric generator out of scrap and uploaded the instructions online. It spread globally in hours. 2 realities, running parallel, neither canceling the other out. That was Earth, always breaking, always building. One day, the Alethi received an encrypted message from Earth, not broadcasted, not accidental. A deliberate, coded signal beamed into deep space, its wavelength bouncing through frequencies only detectable with advanced technology. The message was simple. "We know. No signature, no threat, no desperation, just those 2 words." The ship froze. Analysts confirmed it came from a research station located in the Arctic. The code had been embedded in what appeared to be static interference from a satellite malfunction. It wasn't a fluke. It was a greeting. "They don't know who we are," one analyst said. "But they know someone's out here." Jilorin stared at the signal. "They're guessing," he said. Litrin disagreed. "No, they're hoping." The council aboard the Aleth's voice panicked. "We said no contact," one of the elders protested. "If they can send messages, they will one day receive ours. They will come." "They will come," Jilorin agreed. "But we won't be able to stop it. We never could. Not from the first moment we saw them." Another analyst said. "Should we respond?" "No." "Should we erase their station?" "Absolutely not." "Then what should we do?" Jilorin looked out the window at Earth. "We watch." In the solitude of his private quarters, Jilorin reviewed humanity's oldest stories. Myths, scriptures, fairy tales. He listened to bedtime stories, ghost stories, war stories. And in every culture, every tongue, one theme appeared over and over again: visitors from the stars. Not one civilization in the galaxy besides humanity had invented aliens before seeing them. Only humans looked into the dark sky and imagined someone else already waiting. They were not surprised by the unknown. They longed for it. Perhaps, Jaloran thought, that's why they're so dangerous. They are not afraid of what's out here. They are afraid of never reaching it. Weeks passed. The message didn't repeat. But something changed on Earth. New broadcasts emerged, scientists openly speculating about first contact, entire shows dedicated to what we'd say to aliens. Social media trended with messages like, "Dear Universe, we're here, and if you're watching, blink twice." Artists painted murals of imagined galactic beings embracing humans. Kids drew sketches of spaceships. An international group launched Project Bridge, a symbolic effort to create a universal welcome beacon. Jaloran knew it meant little in practical terms. But emotionally, it meant everything. They weren't asking for salvation. They were asking for acknowledgement. They didn't want help. They wanted to belong. Then came the day that shook the entire Alethi crew. An explosion in a major city killed over 9,000 civilians. An extremist group claimed responsibility. Retaliation was swift, brutal. Thousands more died. Cities descended into chaos. The news screamed. The people wailed. And the rest of the world? They marched. In every major city, millions walked in silence, holding candles, holding signs, holding each other. Not for revenge, not for politics, but for peace, for presence. One sign, held by an old man in a wheelchair, read, "We are a mess, but we're trying." Jaloran wept. That night the crew gathered in the observatory. No orders, no duty roster. They just came. They stood together, staring at the planet that had changed everything. They didn't speak until Lytran, voice barely audible, said, "Do you think they'll make it?" Jaloran didn't answer immediately. He looked down at Earth, at the wild, howling contradiction that called itself humanity, at the dreamers, the killers, the lovers, the builders, the monsters, the poets, the mothers and tyrants and children and saints. And he said, "I don't know." He turned to them all, his voice firmer now. "But I know this. If they do, the galaxy will never be the same." The council chambers aboard the Owleth's voice had grown quiet. There had been no directives from the homeworld since the last transmission. No demands, no recalls, no sanctions. It was as though the Alethi High Order didn't want to get too close to Earth either. Jaloran stood before a projection of the planet, spinning slowly under the ship's artificial gravity. Earth was darkened in this view, night blanketing most of the visible continents. Tiny points of light marked cities. Some glowed warmly. Others flickered erratically, hinting at outages or instability. A few had gone permanently dark. "Observe this," Lytran said, stepping beside him. "Look here, this region." He pointed to a section of the Earth's surface where an entire country had gone offline. Their government fell 6 days ago, an economic collapse, followed by mass protest. A dictator tried to cling to power. Violence followed. Jaloran said nothing. Lytran's finger moved eastward, just across the sea. And this, across the border, a tiny republic, population less than 1 million, just passed a law making education free for every child, regardless of income or nationality, in the same week. "Balance," Jaloran whispered, "madness matched by compassion." He zoomed out on the projection. The planet looked peaceful from this height, almost innocent. But that illusion was a trap. Every square inch of that surface was a battleground, not just for territory, but for ideas. And the humans, They didn't rest. They were always arguing, always pushing, always redefining what they were supposed to be. Their chaos wasn't noise, it was evolution. But Jaloran sensed something else now. A shift. "They're starting to believe again," he murmured. "In the sky." Leitrin nodded. "They've always believed. But now they suspect." That changed everything. Down on Earth, in a remote mountain facility, a man named Elias Quinn watched stars through a telescope he built with his own hands. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't even a professional astronomer. Just a former engineer with a past too heavy to carry and a heart too stubborn to die. He was the one who had sent the signal. We know. He'd risked everything to do it. His reputation, his freedom, maybe his life. But when the message had gone out, when it vanished into that dense nothingness, he felt peace for the first time in years, because he believed someone had heard it. And in the weeks since, nothing had happened. No response, no global broadcast, no alien ships descending over the White House or the Great Pyramid. Just silence. Still, Elias watched, every night, because belief didn't require proof. It required patience. Back aboard the Aleth's voice, the AI triggered a Level 3 alert. Jaloran responded instantly. "What is it?" The AI projected a red pulse across the northern hemisphere. A research team based in northern Europe has begun testing with experimental propulsion systems using high-density ion slingshots, it reported. They have no idea it will rupture local spacefold barriers. They are nearing dangerous thresholds. Litrin's eyes widened. If they tear open local subspace, the echo could destroy their entire atmosphere. "They'll stop before then," said a skeptical analyst. "They always pull back." "No," Jaloran said. "They don't pull back. They push forward. It's who they are." He activated the ship's passive interference field. It would slightly distort the results of the experiment, not enough to stop it, but enough to make the test seem like a failure. The humans would go back to the drawing board. For now. "Delay, not deny," he murmured. "We don't interfere. We don't guide, but we nudge when necessary." Litrin stepped beside him. "They're too close." They've always been too close. Jaloran requested a privacy lock on the observatory later that night. He stood alone, watching Earth shimmer in full daylight. His fingers grazed the edge of the control console. He'd seen 1,000 worlds, but none haunted him like this one. Because Earth didn't ask to be known. It dared to be. It didn't whisper into the void. It shouted. He activated a private log. Entry 17, observation reflection. A pause. He searched for words. "I've begun to feel envious." Another pause. "They're irrational, illogical, primitive in many ways, but they have something we no longer do. Rawness. They feel everything, so fully. Their pain is not quiet. Their joy is not restrained. Even their hatred burns with a purity I don't understand. Perhaps they still remember what we've forgotten." He closed the log. "Perhaps that's why I'm afraid." Weeks turned into months. Earth continued its dance. Conflict, collapse, miracle, madness. One nation fell into civil war. Another launched a deep space listening station funded by teenagers through crowdfunding platforms. A viral movement turned the attention of an entire generation toward sustainability, while a separate group weaponized the same platforms to spread conspiracy and hate. And yet, the stars stayed in their eyes. The sky became a symbol again. Stories flourished, movies, novels, music, more than ever. Art depicting humanity among the stars, not conquering, not ruling, but being. Part of something larger. Children in remote villages built paper rockets. Teenagers programmed AI poetry about distant galaxies. Old men wept watching moon landings on flickering screens. Humanity was reaching, not with hands, with hearts. One night, aboard the ship, something extraordinary happened. The AI picked up a burst of coded signal from multiple points across Earth, different locations, different languages, but the same message repeated. Not the old one. A new phrase? If you're watching, thank you. There was no way the humans could have known they were being watched, but they felt it. Somehow, on a level the Alethi couldn't quantify. Gratitude, not fear, not demand. Just thanks. The crew stood stunned in the control room. Litrin whispered, "They're not asking for anything." Jellerin nodded, his throat tight. "They're just glad we exist." Jellerin made the decision himself. He didn't consult the council. He didn't file a formal report. He simply recorded a message and embedded it in a frequency humans hadn't yet mastered but would, soon. No name, no origin. Just a few translated words, simple and heavy. We see you. We hear you. We believe in your becoming. Be patient. Be kind. You are not alone. The message would sit there, invisible, until Earth caught up. And one day, maybe years, maybe centuries, a human would find it. And know. Far below, Elias Quinn sat beneath the stars with a blanket wrapped around his shoulders and a radio receiver on his lap. Static hummed softly. Cold wind bit at his face. The fire beside him flickered. He closed his eyes and smiled. He didn't need proof. He only needed to wait. The seasons turned on Earth, as they always did, carelessly, cruelly, beautifully. Spring thawed what winter froze, and life bloomed again in cities, forests, and hearts alike. Across continents, flowers sprouted through the cracks of war-torn buildings. Children ran barefoot over lands their parents had bled on. Hope, like weeds, refused to stay buried. Above, aboard the Auleth's voice, the observers remained anchored to the sky, orbiting silently like a ghost watching a family it could never rejoin. But something had changed. Something had shifted. It was subtle, like the breath before a scream. Litrin first noticed it while scanning Earth's civilian broadcasts. "They're organizing," he said, blinking at the data feed. "Not by nation, not even by ideology." Jellerin leaned over his shoulder. The screens displayed fragments, chat forums, podcasts, school curriculums, even video games. But through the noise, a message was growing louder. We are one planet, one species, and someone is watching. At first it was treated like myth, like hope disguised as fiction. But as more unexplainable events occurred, satellites rerouting just before malfunction, data anomalies, unidentified atmospheric shifts, people began to wonder, then to believe. Some of them suspect divine presence, Leitrin said. Others are creating new philosophies, religions, but not around saviors, around the idea of being observed. Jellerin stared at a message posted anonymously in dozens of languages across different social platforms. If they see us, we should be worth watching. And humanity began to change, not all at once, not everywhere. There were still wars, still crime, still the ugly, snarling remnants of fear, greed, tribalism, but something deeper was stirring. A unifying thread. A desire to be seen in the best light possible. A movement took hold, not organized by governments or corporations, but by people. They called it the upward gaze. It was subtle, gentle, but powerful. Communities planting gardens instead of paving malls. Citizens documenting and exposing corruption not for fame, but because someone out there might be watching. Youth groups cleaning rivers, teaching each other science, learning to look up beyond toward something bigger than their own survival. A teenage girl from Brazil wrote an essay that went viral. "We are not ready, but we are waking up. We are a child in the dark, knowing now that someone has turned on the hallway light. And that light isn't a threat. It's a reminder that we're not alone. That someone cares if we get out of bed." Jaloran read the essay 3 times. Then he sat in silence for hours. He didn't understand how they were doing this. No other species the Alethi had observed had ever evolved morally under pressure. Survival? Yes. Technological advancement? Of course. But kindness, humility, compassion? No species had used the idea of observation to better themselves. The fear should have made them hide, Litrin said, or lash out. But instead, it made them reflect. Jaloran stared out at the swirling clouds over the Atlantic. "They're not reacting like prey," he said. "They're reacting like performers." Litrin looked at him sideways. "You think this is for us?" "No. I think it's for them. We're just the excuse they needed to become what they were always afraid to try." Meanwhile, Elias Quinn's message, "We know," was becoming legend. Not because it had been confirmed, but because no one could prove it hadn't. More and more humans believed it was real, that someone out there had received it. And though Elias never confessed to being the source, he watched the myth grow, like a wildfire catching on kindling hearts. He wasn't afraid anymore. He felt something better. He felt like part of the story. Back aboard the ship, the Alethi AI ran a predictive sociological simulation based on the current trajectory of Earth's culture. What it found stunned the crew. They're developing a civilizational self-image without central coordination, it explained. Within 3 generations, there is a 48% probability they will abandon traditional state structures entirely and reform around a planetary cooperative identity. "Without conquest?" one analyst asked. "Without force," the AI confirmed. "No empire, no emperor, no war." "Only the idea that someone is watching," the AI replied. "And they want to be worth being seen." The room fell into stunned silence, and then, as if Earth were listening, a new image was transmitted into space by a global art coalition. A photo mosaic composed of 8.4 million human portraits arranged pixel by pixel into a single shape. A human eye staring upward, surrounded by stars. Below it, in bold letters translated into 50 languages, "We are trying." The Alethi Council on the Homeworld sent a message. The crew gathered to hear it. The voice of the Grand Curator, formal and emotionless, echoed through the observatory. "Return home, deliver your findings, leave the planet to its own fate." Jaloran stood in silence after the message ended. He did not move. Neither did Litrin. "Shall I initiate course calculations?" the pilot finally asked. "No," Jaloran said. Litrin stepped forward. "We're not done." "The Council isn't watching Earth." Jaloran walked toward the center of the observatory and turned to the crew. "Everyone here," he said, "has seen what I've seen. Not just the madness, not just the darkness, but the spark." He paused. "Somewhere on that planet is a child who will one day become the first human to speak to the stars." He looked each of them in the eye. "I want to be here when they do." The crew voted unanimously. They would stay. They would keep watching. No interference. No contact. Just presence. Silent, distant, constant. A mirror far above. Back on Earth, storms came. Economies collapsed. Empires rose and crumbled. But still, the sky held them. The belief that they were seen, known, measured not by dominance but by intent, had taken root. And even when everything else cracked, that belief held. Teachers told children, "Do good, someone out there is watching. Parents told stories of faraway eyes and silent ships. Artists painted stars not with fear, but longing. And every few years, someone, somewhere, sent a new message into space. No threats, no demands, just soft declarations, like letters in a bottle. We hope we're getting better. We dream of meeting you. We are not perfect, but we are trying. And high above the clouds, the Alepth's voice remained, unchanged, untouched, unseen. But not unmoved. Jellerin, older now, slower, sat in the observatory, hands folded, eyes on the blue marble below. He no longer tried to explain it. He simply watched, waited, and wondered. Not if they would come, but when, and what they would bring with them when they did. The years passed, not quickly, but with purpose. Earth spun, burned, healed, and howled as it always did, but something had changed in its rhythm. A subtle hum beneath the chaos, an undercurrent of collective focus. The humans were still a mess, still divided, still loud with grief and brimming with contradiction. But more and more of them began to look upward, not with fear, but with expectation. Jellerin stood before the aging console of the Alepth's voice, staring at the newest stream of transmissions from Earth. It had become a ritual now, every rotation. His team logged thousands of messages launched into deep space, on purpose. But these weren't requests for rescue, or conquest, or trade. These were stories, some in the form of song, some encrypted as art, others as essays and confessions, raw and trembling. They were writing to the stars not as subjects seeking an overlord, nor explorers staking claims, but as witnesses of their own becoming. One message had played on repeat in the observatory for days now. It had captured the hearts of the crew. A child's voice, gentle and full of wonder. Dear whoever's out there, I hope you have music. If you don't, we'll bring you some. Jellerin hadn't wept in a decade. He wept that night. Down on Earth, Elias Quinn had grown old. His mountain cabin was now the center of a strange little movement, the Watcher's Circle. Not a religion, not exactly. Just a fellowship of thinkers, scientists, poets, and engineers who believed truly and quietly that something was above. Not God, not myth, but presence. They met once a month, never more than a few dozen of them at a time, and they told stories, read transmissions, monitored skies, recorded strange interference in their machines they couldn't explain. Elias no longer needed recognition. He just wanted to be alive long enough to see it happen. They won't come down here, he often told the group, tapping the side of his old telescope. But they'll be there, up in the dark, and when we finally break through our atmosphere for good, they'll be waiting. He never told them how he knew, but they believed him anyway, because the sky felt different now. Back aboard the Alepth's voice, the AI issued a new alert. Not a warning. A prompt, Earth probe initiating interstellar trajectory. Target vector, uncharted. Motive, message delivery. Type, manned. Manned? Litrin's eyes widened. They're sending someone? Not yet, said the systems analyst. But they've built a chamber, cryostasis. One human, female, age 31, volunteer. Jellerin reviewed the data. The probe was small, mostly symbolic, underpowered, unlikely to reach another star system. But it was not meant to. The message was not in the arrival. It was in the launch. They're not waiting anymore, Litrin whispered. Jellerin nodded, eyes never leaving the probe's blueprint. They never were. On Earth, the event was global. The media called her the Silent Ambassador. Her name was Dr. Kira Solon, a xenolinguist, poet, and astrophysicist from Nairobi. She'd volunteered without hesitation. I want to be a question we send to the universe, she said during a press interview. Even if there's no one to answer it, the question still matters. The launch was modest. There were no military parades, no governments trying to brand it, just people. Crowds gathering in cities, towns, on rooftops, in deserts and rainforests, watching the sky. A new rocket, a new symbol, not of dominance, but of hope. As the boosters ignited and the probe rose into the atmosphere, millions of humans pressed hands to chests, to mouths, to the sky, and whispered, not prayers, thanks. Aboard the Alepht's voice, the crew stood in silence as the ship's sensors tracked the human probe, breaching the edge of the atmosphere. Inside, Dr. Kira Solon lay in cryo-sleep, surrounded by data chips, cultural archives, and a single handwritten letter sealed in gold foil addressed to whoever's first. Jaloran stared as the trajectory aligned. She won't survive the trip, one analyst said quietly. She's not supposed to, Leitrin replied. She's proof, Jaloran said, that they're not afraid of dying trying to meet us. He turned to the crew. This is it, the end of the beginning. 10 days after launch, the probe crossed the gravitational pull of Earth's sun. Slow, drifting, steady. The AI logged its velocity, its purpose. The council back home sent no reply. Jaloran no longer cared, because Earth had stopped waiting for permission to evolve. It had simply decided to. In the years that followed, a new movement grew on Earth. Quiet but massive. No flags, no borders, a generational shift. Children were taught not just about history, but about humanity, as a species, as a singular storm-tossed family fumbling toward something bigger than itself. Science exploded, not because of competition, but curiosity. They stopped building weapons with their best minds and started building bridges. And somewhere in the middle of this slow revolution, someone cracked the embedded frequency Jaloran had encoded years ago. They found the message. We see you. We hear you. We believe in your becoming. Be patient. Be kind. You are not alone. The world froze. Not because it was afraid, but because it had always known. They didn't reveal it immediately. No leaders stood up to wave it like a victory flag. No governments declared first contact. Instead, the message was released anonymously, quietly, letting people feel it first. And feel it they did. The skies lit up that night, not from war, but from lanterns. Millions of lights launched into the air from homes, rooftops, refugee camps, skyscrapers, deserts, and boats, each light a whisper into the void. We made it. Back aboard the Alepht's voice, the observatory no longer felt distant. The crew watched as the world below embraced a moment none of them had truly prepared for. A moment where myth became memory. Litrin leaned on the railing beside Jaloran, voice quiet. You were right to stay. No, Jaloran said. We were right to believe. One day later, a new signal arrived. Not from the government, not from a radio tower, not from a space agency. From a boy, just 11 years old. Homemade transmitter, binary-coded translation software built in his garage. The message? What's your favorite color? Jaloran laughed for the first time in years. A good start, he whispered. The transmission was archived, as all were, but Jaloran didn't erase it. He saved it and began to write something back. Not a full reply. That would break protocol, not yet. Just a number, encoded, hidden. The boy would crack it eventually, and when he did, he would read, blue, like your oceans, and your eyes when you cry, and your sky when you finally looked up. The galaxy turned, as it always had. Cold, vast, mostly silent. Empires rose and fell light years apart without ever knowing the other existed. Ancient worlds flickered out in entropy. Some species vanished into digital utopias, others into extinction. The stars, indifferent, burned on. But one world, one impossible world, began to whisper back. Earth was no longer just broadcasting messages. It was building something, and the galaxy could feel it. Aboard the Alepth's Voice, now orbiting its 39th year above Earth, the crew had grown older, wiser, not in their understanding of humanity, but in their surrender to the truth. Humanity was not meant to be understood. It was meant to be witnessed. Jaloran stood in the central observatory, watching what had once seemed impossible. The humans were constructing their first true starship. Not a probe, not a symbolic gesture. A vessel, designed for long-range, manned interstellar travel. No weapons, no war paint. Its hull was engraved with thousands of names in every language. Beneath them, one phrase repeated over and over: "We're coming to meet you." Jaloran watched as the structure formed in orbit, a collaboration of over 40 nations. Powered by technology still crude compared to the Alethi, but breathtaking in what it meant. No single race, in the history of recorded galactic civilization, had built their first interstellar ship for peace. Only humans. On Earth, a global day of silence was held during the final welding of the ship's core. Billions of people stood still, eyes turned to the sky. The silence lasted exactly 60 seconds. Then, across every continent, people clapped, cheered, wept, not because they believed the journey would be easy, but because they'd proven something greater. They had earned the right to try. In the mountain cabin, Elias Quinn, now too old to walk without help, watched the launch schedule unfold across his screen. He was alone now. His fellow watchers had moved on or passed on. But the belief remained. He stared up at the ceiling. Past the wood, through the clouds, into the stars, and whispered, "Come on, just one more miracle." The ship was named Unity 1. And it was more than a vessel, it was a declaration. The captain selected was not a soldier, not a politician, but a teacher, Amara Day, a 54-year-old former refugee who'd taught literature and astronomy to orphans in 5 different war zones before being nominated. Her mission was not conquest, not even exploration. It was simply this: to show the stars what we became. Aboard the Alepth's Voice, alarms pinged softly. Unity 1. Launch imminent. Launch countdown. Zorogoro, Tien. Jaloran didn't speak, neither did Litrin. The entire crew gathered at the main deck, watching the small silver vessel rise through Earth's upper atmosphere, boosters flaring with a light as defiant as it was fragile. There were no weapons, no escorts, just one ship, carrying the dreams of a planet that had finally learned to stop tearing itself apart long enough to build something together. The launch was flawless. Unity 1 soared into space, folding through rudimentary gravity wells and engaging its new, still unstable, FTL drive. Its course? Open-ended. The humans had chosen not to aim it at any one star. Instead, they sent it into the unknown, a symbolic gesture of trust, an act of surrender, of hope. Days passed, then weeks. Unity 1 sent back logs, video transmissions, poetry written by schoolchildren and read aloud by the crew. A dog barked in the background of one feed. A violin played in another. They weren't trying to impress. They were just being. Then, on the 37th day, Unity 1 encountered something strange. A distortion. A shadow in space, uncatalogued, unnatural. Jaloran knew what it was. The Alepth's Voice had activated its passive perimeter veil, a final test. Would the humans panic, attack, turn back? Unity 1 held its position, then a transmission. Audio only. "If you're there, you don't have to hide anymore. We brought music and stories and questions, and a promise not to ruin whatever we find." Silence followed. Then Unity 1 added, "We're scared, but we showed up. That should count for something." Jaloran felt his heart break and rebuild in the same breath. He turned to his crew. "Prepare the beacon," he said. "Let them see." And for the first time since the beginning of time, Earth saw what it had never dared to hope for. A shape emerged from the dark. A sleek ship of impossible geometry. Light dancing along curves not bound by physics as humans knew them. The Owleth's voice revealed itself. Unity 1 did not retreat. Its captain smiled, then whispered to her crew, "Be gentle, they're watching." The first contact was not words. It was a sound. Jaloran sent back the song the human child had recorded decades ago. The voice echoed through Unity 1's deck. "I hope you have music. If you don't, we'll bring you some." Amara Day wept. "Thank you," she whispered. "We hoped you'd come." Back on Earth, the skies lit up once more. Not with fire, but with confirmation. The news broke across every screen, every radio, every fiber of collective imagination. They weren't alone. They had never been. Elias Quinn died 2 days later, peacefully, a small smile on his face, his hand resting on an old radio that never really worked. Except, maybe it had. The galaxy took notice. Other species, some ancient, some secret, turned their gaze toward the planet once dismissed as unstable. They saw a world that had chosen compassion over control, curiosity over conquest, meaning over mastery. And they watched as humans took their first steps into the stars, not as conquerors, but as invited guests. A new file was added to the galactic historical record: species, human status, active participant, cultural potential, unpredictable threat level, none known. Recommendation: observe closely, engage gently, learn from them, do not underestimate. They are becoming something new. Back aboard the Owleth's voice, Jaloran recorded his final observation log. "We were sent to watch. We ended up learning. Humanity has defied every expectation, not by avoiding darkness, but by walking through it. They did not evolve beyond pain. They learned to live with it, and to still create beauty. What makes them dangerous is not their rage. It is their love, relentless, unreasonable love, for each other, for strangers, for the unknown. They are not finished, but they are no longer lost. The galaxy had no words for what we saw. Now, we do. We call them family. And Earth, messy, hopeful, broken, beautiful Earth, looked up once more and smiled back.